Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dev Influencer Show. I'm your host, Charles Max Wood. And last time I talked about a call that I had with Luca from Italy. And we were talking about how to get his target customer, right? And we kind of talked about, one of the things we talked about is whether or not he wanted to go local or go worldwide. He said he wanted to go local, so we just focused on that. And then we talked about interviewing people in his market, right? As part of his content strategy in order to make the connection that he needed to make. I want to dive in, though, and talk about the second question he asked. And the second question he asked was basically, can I do a show where I interview or where I talk about what I do, right? Where I talk about UI and UX. And it was funny because initially my response was, no, you really don't want to do that. And let me explain why I reacted that way and then kind of why I changed my tune a little bit, okay? So initially, the problem, and this is a problem that I had too, right? So I went freelance, and then about, 8-10 months later, we started Ruby Rogues, right? And I was finding clients, right, by networking and doing other things. I was finding clients, but the problem was that all of my content was focused toward developers. And so most of the customers that I was finding were essentially referrals from developers who wanted to work with me, okay? And so they wanted me to be on their team. They wanted to work on my stuff, blah, 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 blah. Some of the customers that I got had watched a video on how to build a something clone, right? And they wanted something like that, and so they hire me, right? But the problem is that most of my content was developer focused. And so getting the types of customers that I wanted to hire me, right? People who wanted custom this or custom that. Eventually, I kind of settled on custom social networks and built things that kind of look like Facebook, kind of not. I wasn't talking to them at all on my content, right? And so I kept getting referrals for jobs where I was essentially joining a team and working on stuff for that team. And that wasn't the kind of work I wanted to do. And so initially I was telling Luca, I was like, dude, it doesn't make a ton of sense for you to be covering UX and UI at the level of, hey, we're UX and UI people, right? And so we're going to talk about UX and UI stuff. And he's like, okay, well, is there a way to do that where I would be attracting my target audience? And I thought about it and I was like, yeah, I guess you could, right? You just have to be very deliberate, right? So you're not going to descend into the jargon. You're not going to descend into the stuff you talk about at the UI or UX conference. You're not going to descend into the ideas around, what do I do with this or what do I do with that? Or how do I, so many pixels or, things like that, right? What you're going to talk about is you're going to talk about user retention. You're going to talk about the numbers, right? The things that the executives care about, right? The executives that are going to make the decision to hire you care about. And so you're not going to talk about how to make a text input, the best text input in the world, right? You're just not going to descend to that level. What you're going to talk about is you're going to talk about, hey, I bet you're losing people, you're losing people to retention based on this thing, right? Your form takes too long to submit. I bet you're losing people because your website is too slow. I bet you're losing people because when you scroll, your website looks funky. I bet you're losing people because it's hard to figure out where they have to go in order to get the work done. I bet you're losing people because it's really hard to figure out where to click in order to get this thing, right? Where to get this resource, how to get this thing done, right? And so what you do then is you can turn around and you can say, so here are a few ideas of some of the things you can do to keep the retention up by solving this particular problem, right? And then you just give them broad strokes on how they do it. And it was funny too, because we're in the middle of the sales call and I said, I've been doing this with you the entire time, right? I haven't told you how to set up a podcast. I haven't told you how to plan out content. I haven't told you how to do any of this stuff, right? And the reality is that I'm not going to. We only have an hour. So I'm going to give you the really high-level strategy stuff. And then if you want the specifics, you're probably going to have to hire me because we just don't have time in a 1-hour call to make this happen. And that's all I can afford to give up for free, right? And he's like, yeah, that makes sense, right? And so it wasn't this, hey, I'm going to play this game in order to get your money. It's just realistically, that's where we're at, right? I can afford to give you an hour. I cannot afford to give you 2. Okay. And so if you want the specifics, right, I'm going to give you as much high level information as possible, because I think that's where the value is in an hour, right? If I have 10 hours, we're probably going to start getting into specifics, but we don't have 10 hours. If you join the accelerator, we have 10 hours, right? And when you get stuck, you can, ping me on Discord and I'll answer, right? If you get stuck, you probably wind up, being able to send me a message some other way. He was in Italy, so text message kind of out, right? That's why we set up Discord, right? But you have these other means of getting a hold of me, right? You can email me and I will email you back, right? Because you're in the accelerator and I know that you're a priority for me, right? And so you're going to get the time to get into the specifics. And so for me, it was like, look, if you really want to talk about the technical end of what you do, what you're doing is you're actually talking about the customer focused end of what you do, and you're tying it into the technical stuff that you do, right? And then you give them some ideas of what you can do. And then at the end, you give them a call to action that says, hey, look, if you want more specific instruction, right? You want more stuff to tie together. You want more stuff to bring in together, then contact me and go to blah, 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 right? And so for me, what I'm doing is I'm doing the same thing, right? I'm not hiding anything here. I'm going to call it straight out, right? So I'm giving you the ideas behind these strategies. And then what we're diving into is I'm saying, hey, look, I'm doing this for 10 minutes, right? This is a 10-minute episode. And at the end of 10 minutes, we're done talking strategy. If you want an hour, go to devinfluencers.com/apply. Put your email address in there, fill out the form. I'll get back to you and we will set up a strategic call, right? And that's the next step. And then we'll sit on the strategic call and we'll talk about your specific situation. We'll work through it. We'll figure out what's going on, right? Just like what he's doing, right? And he may use examples from his clients or from some of the consulting that he does or some of the 1-hour strategic calls that he does, right? With his potential clients, right? He can do the same thing. And then at the end of the day, he can say, all right, well, the hour's up. This is all this is all the time I have. So do you want to hire me for more time, right? So that we can keep working on this? Or do you want to go figure it out on your own? Just keep in mind that if you hire me, we can do this in a few weeks. And if you don't, it's probably going to take you several months to figure this stuff out, right? And that's essentially what it boils down to. So what do you want? And when do you want it, right? Do you want it now? Right? Is this something that you really want? And if it is, then let's go for it. Right? And then we can start talking about the specifics of what exactly there is to offer. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's what we're talking about. So can you put together a technical show that targets your audience? Yeah, you could do it. The problem is that you have to be very, very deliberate to make sure that you aren't setting yourself up so that you're talking above their heads or talking about stuff that targets the wrong audience, right? And so you have to make sure that what you're doing addresses their concerns. But if you can do that and you can do it properly, then what you wind up with is something that they can actually go consume, right? And so let's say that he does both strategies, the one I talked about yesterday and the one I talked about today, right? So he's interviewing his customers and then he's got this other show, right? So he can actually reference the other show. Well, there you go. Now you have a portfolio. And the difference is that portfolio you built up 10 minutes at a time just by talking about the principles instead of putting out, hours and hours and hours of stuff that they have to go comb through to figure out if you can do what they want. They just go listen to it and go, yeah, he's an expert. Let's hire him, right? And it's easy and they can listen to you on the way home. It's no brainer. If you want to figure out how to do this, just go to devinfluencers.com/apply. Put your email address in, fill in the application. We'll jump on a strategic call. We'll talk through your situation. We'll figure out what makes sense for you, and then we'll knock it out of the park. But if you're looking for customers, this is a terrific way to get it. And you get in front of them, we'll figure out how to target them, we'll figure out how to get you where you want to go, and then we will help you grow your show, help you grow your audience, and thereby help you grow your business. All right. Well, that's all I got for today. Until next time, Max out.